14-year-old Marcus was searching for shelter beneath the old factory when he heard it, desperate screaming from below. Racing toward the sound, he found Sarah trapped in a flooding underground chamber, water rising past her waist. She clawed at the walls, panic in her eyes. "Please, my brother, Reaper, he'll never forgive himself if I die here." The name hit Marcus like lightning. Everyone knew Reaper. Everyone feared him. But Sarah was drowning, and Marcus had seconds to decide. Risk everything to save a Hell's Angel's sister, or walk away and survive another day alone. The water surged higher. Sarah's screams turned to gurgles. Welcome to Hell's Angels family. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because this story will touch your heart in ways you won't expect. To my faithful subscribers who've been here from the beginning, may God continue to bless you abundantly. Before we dive in, let's lift this moment up in prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you asking for your divine protection over everyone watching right now. Bless their families, Lord. Heal their bodies, provide for their needs, and give them peace that surpasses all understanding. Surround them with your favor and let your presence be felt in their lives today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, what you're about to witness isn't just another street story. It's about a 14-year-old homeless boy who discovers a drowning woman trapped in an underground chamber, exposes a corrupt detective who's been getting away with murder for 15 years, and finds the family he never thought he'd have in the most unexpected place. Marcus pressed his body against the crumbling brick wall of the abandoned factory, rain soaking through his threadbare jacket as Chicago's winter wind cut through the industrial district like a knife. The temperature had dropped 15 degrees in the last hour, and his fingers were going numb despite being shoved deep into his pockets. He'd been searching for shelter for hours, dodging the AI-monitored cameras that the city had installed across the revitalization zones. Cameras that meant cops, and cops meant questions he couldn't answer without ending up in a system that had already failed him once. The old manufacturing district near Lake Michigan had been his sanctuary for 3 weeks now, a forgotten corner of the city where broken windows and collapsed roofs provided just enough cover to survive another night. But tonight felt different. Wrong. The air carried a tension that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up, some primal instinct screaming that danger was close. Marcus had learned to trust that instinct during his 3 years on these streets. It had kept him alive when nothing else would. Then he heard it, a scream so desperate, so raw with terror, that it stopped him cold in his tracks. Not the usual sounds of the city at night, not drunks fighting or car alarms wailing. This was different. This was someone dying. 14 years on these streets had taught him one ironclad rule. Other people's problems got you killed. Getting involved meant becoming visible, and visibility meant vulnerability. Every homeless kid who tried to play hero had either ended up in juvie or worse. But something about that voice, the way it clawed through the darkness with pure animal panic, wouldn't let him walk away. Marcus sprinted toward the sound, his worn sneakers splashing through puddles of oil and rainwater, his lungs burning in the frigid air. His heart hammered against his ribs as he navigated the maze of abandoned machinery and collapsed scaffolding, following the screams like a beacon through the industrial graveyard. The factory loomed above him, its broken windows like empty eye sockets watching his every move. He'd explored most of this complex over the past weeks, mapping safe routes and hiding spots, but he'd never ventured to this particular section. The ground here was unstable, the structures too dangerous even for someone as desperate as him. Until now, the screaming intensified, and Marcus found the source, a jagged opening in the ground, partially hidden beneath rotted wooden pallets and rusted machinery that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Someone had moved the debris recently, though. He could see fresh scrape marks in the dirt, and that observation sent ice through his veins. This wasn't random. This was deliberate. The screaming was coming from below, echoing up through the opening with increasing desperation. Marcus grabbed his phone, a battered Android he'd salvaged from a dumpster 6 months ago, held together with electrical tape and hope, and the cracked screen barely provided enough light as he peered into the darkness. What he saw made his blood turn to ice. 20 feet down, in what looked like an old underground chamber from the factory's forgotten past, a woman was trapped. She couldn't have been more than 25, her dark hair plastered to her face, her clothes soaked through. But it was the water that made Marcus's stomach drop. It was pouring in from broken pipes in the walls, gushing with the force of a fire hydrant, already past her waist and rising with terrifying speed. The woman clawed at the concrete walls, her fingers bloody from scraping against the rough surface, her face twisted in a mask of desperation that Marcus recognized all too well. It was the face of someone who'd given up hope, but kept fighting anyway. Their eyes met across the darkness, and in that moment, Marcus saw himself reflected back. He saw every night he'd spent alone and terrified, every moment he'd wondered if anyone would care if he just disappeared. "Please," she screamed up at him, her voice breaking with exhaustion and fear. "My brother, Reaper. God. Please, he'll never forgive himself if I die here. Please help me." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow, like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart. Reaper. Everyone in Chicago knew that name. Everyone feared it. The Hells Angels' top enforcer, a man whose reputation for violence preceded him like thunder before lightning. Marcus had seen Reaper once, from a distance, outside a bar in the South Side. The way people moved around him, the way conversations stopped when he walked past. It was like watching a shark move through a school of fish. This wasn't just some random woman drowning in a forgotten hole. This was Sarah, Reaper's 24-year-old sister, and she was going to die in a tomb beneath the city unless Marcus did something right now. His hands trembled as he processed the implications. He could run, disappear into the night like he always did, like a ghost haunting Chicago's forgotten places. Nobody would ever know a homeless kid had been here. Nobody would blame him. Sarah would die screaming in the dark, but Marcus would survive to see another sunrise, and survival was all that mattered on the streets. Except he couldn't move. His feet stayed planted at the edge of that opening, watching the water surge higher, reaching Sarah's chest now, and something inside him, something he thought the streets had killed years ago, refused to let him walk away. "Hold on," Marcus shouted down to her, his voice cracking with adrenaline and fear. "Just hold on, I'm coming." He scanned the area frantically, his phone lights sweeping across decades of industrial debris. There had to be something, some way to reach her. Then he spotted it, a length of old chain attached to a rusted pulley system mounted on a support beam. It probably hadn't been used since the factory closed in the 80s, and the metal looked corroded enough to snap under pressure, but it was his only option. Marcus wrapped the chain around the support beam, testing its strength with his full weight. It held, barely, groaning in protest but not breaking. His hands shook as he gripped the chain, knowing that if this failed, he'd fall 20 feet onto concrete and likely break both legs. But Sarah's screams were getting weaker, more desperate, and the water was at her shoulders now. He lowered himself into the flooding chamber, hand over hand, the rusted chain cutting into his palms. The moment his feet hit the water, the cold shocked his entire system. It felt like being stabbed with 1,000 frozen needles all at once, so intense that his muscles seized, and he nearly lost his grip. The water was far colder than he'd expected, fed by underground pipes that carried runoff from Lake Michigan, probably near freezing. It was already at his waist and climbing fast, much faster than seemed natural. Someone had opened these pipes deliberately, turned them on full blast to fill this chamber as quickly as possible. Sarah grabbed onto him with desperate strength, her body shaking violently from cold and fear. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated with shock, and Marcus could see she was close to hypothermia. "Who are you?" she gasped, her teeth chattering so hard she could barely form words. "Why are you helping me? You're just a kid." "Because nobody helped me," Marcus said simply, the truth spilling out before he could stop it. "And I know what it's like to die alone." He started searching for a way out, his mind racing through possibilities. The entrance he'd come through was too high to reach now. The chain would never support both their weights climbing up, and the water had risen too far to boost Sarah up manually. The pipes continued gushing, the sound deafening in the enclosed space, and Marcus realized with growing horror that they had maybe 5 minutes before the chamber filled completely. Then he heard it. Voices above, getting closer, and everything inside Marcus screamed danger. She should be dead by now, a man's voice said, cold and clinical, utterly devoid of emotion. Check the water levels through the monitoring system. Make sure there's no way she survived this. Camera shows the chambers at 70% capacity. Another voice responded. Give it another 3 minutes, and it's done. Clean, untraceable. Looks like she was exploring and fell in. Marcus's entire body went rigid. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't some tragic mistake. Someone had trapped Sarah down here deliberately, had triggered these pipes remotely, and they were standing above right now watching her drown like it was a science experiment. They had cameras. They had been monitoring this whole time, which meant they might have seen him climb down. Subscribe now before it's too late. Comment where you're watching from. Sarah's eyes widened with recognition at those voices, her face draining of what little color remained even in the dim light from Marcus's phone. Kane, she whispered, and the name carried so much venom, so much rage mixed with terror, that Marcus knew this was personal. They found me. The ones who killed my father 15 years ago. They know I was getting close to the truth. The water reached Marcus's chest, rising past Sarah's chin, and panic clawed at his throat with razor-sharp talons. He'd survived 3 Chicago winters homeless, had dodged gangs and predators in cold that should have killed a kid his age, but he was going to drown in a forgotten hole beneath a factory that time forgot. His lungs would fill with freezing water, and nobody would ever find his body. He'd just be another missing homeless kid, another statistic, another ghost. Then he saw it. A drainage tunnel, partially submerged in the corner of the chamber, barely visible in the dying light of his phone. The opening was small, maybe 2 feet in diameter, and he had absolutely no idea where it led or if it even had an exit. It could dead-end 50 feet in, leaving them trapped in an even smaller tomb. But the water was at their necks now. Sarah's head tilted back to keep her mouth and nose above the surface, and Marcus could hear footsteps descending into the chamber from above. Men with voices like executioners, coming to confirm their kill. Can you hold your breath? Marcus asked Sarah, already pulling her toward the tunnel, knowing they had no choice, no time for debate or second-guessing. She nodded, her whole body trembling, her lips turning blue. How long? Long enough, Marcus lied, because the truth was he didn't know, and the truth would make her panic. On 3. Fill your lungs completely. Don't let go of me no matter what. 1, 2, 3. They dove beneath the surface together, and the world became absolute darkness and freezing pressure. Marcus pulled them both toward the drainage tunnel, his shoulders slamming against the concrete rim as he navigated by touch alone. The tunnel was even smaller than it looked, barely wide enough for their bodies, and Marcus had to pull Sarah through sideways, his shoulders scraping against concrete that hadn't seen maintenance since before he was born. Rust and algae coated every surface, making it slippery, and twice his grip on Sarah almost failed. His lungs burned within seconds, the cold accelerating his oxygen consumption, and black spots began dancing in his vision. 20 seconds in. 30. His chest felt like it was being crushed in a vice. 40 seconds. His body screamed for air, every instinct demanding he open his mouth and breathe, even though it would kill him. 50 seconds. The tunnel seemed endless, stretching into infinity, and Marcus realized with dawning horror that they weren't going to make it. Then his hand broke through into open air. Marcus pulled them both forward with the last of his strength, and they burst to the surface in a wider tunnel, gasping and choking, their bodies convulsing as they dragged oxygen into starving lungs. The sound of their breathing echoed off curved concrete walls that disappeared into darkness in both directions. This section of the underground system was older, part of Chicago's original infrastructure, and it smelled of rust and decay and things that had been forgotten for decades. But it wasn't flooding, and that was all that mattered. Marcus and Sarah collapsed against the curved wall, their bodies shaking uncontrollably, water streaming from their clothes and pooling around them. Marcus's teeth chattered so violently he bit his tongue, tasting blood. His hands were scraped raw, his shoulders bruised from the tunnel, and every muscle in his body screamed with exhaustion. For a long moment, neither of them could speak, could do anything but breathe and shake and try to process the fact that they were still alive. Then Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm with surprising strength, her eyes fierce despite her exhaustion, despite the hypothermia setting in, despite everything. "You just saved my life," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "You don't know me. You don't know my brother. You don't know what you just walked into. But you risked everything anyway. Why?" Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude, uncomfortable with being seen. "I told you already. Nobody ever helped me. I know what it's like to need someone and have the entire world turn its back. I know what it's like to scream for help and hear nothing but silence." Sarah studied his face in the dim emergency lighting that barely illuminated the tunnel, really seeing him. Maybe for the first time anyone had truly looked at him in years. Not seeing a homeless kid or a problem or a statistic, but seeing Marcus. "You're just a kid," she said softly, and there was something like wonder in her voice. "How old are you?" 14, Marcus confirmed. "Been homeless for the last 3 years. Since my mom died and the foster system decided I was too much trouble." "Not anymore," Sarah said with sudden fierce determination that cut through her exhaustion. "Marcus, listen to me. What I was doing down there, what almost got me killed tonight, it's bigger than you can possibly know. 15 years ago, my father was a decorated police officer in Atlanta. Everyone loved him. He was a hero. Then he got transferred to Chicago for a special task force, and 2 months later he was murdered during a raid in this exact location. Everyone said it was gang violence, collateral damage in the war on drugs. Case closed, but I never believed it." She paused, coughing up water, her whole body shuddering. "I've been investigating for 2 years, using leaked databases I accessed through encrypted channels, running facial recognition software through old surveillance footage, tracking money transfers and connections. Marcus, my father wasn't killed by gangsters. He was killed by another cop. Someone who's still wearing a badge right now in Chicago's downtown precinct. Someone powerful enough to make entire investigations disappear." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications that made Marcus's skin crawl beneath his soaked clothes. "The corrupt cop who killed your father 15 years ago," he said slowly, pieces clicking together in his mind. "He's the one who tried to drown you tonight. He's one of the voices we heard above." Sarah nodded grimly, her jaw clenched with rage that had been building for 15 years. Detective Vincent Kane, 30-year veteran of the Chicago PD, decorated officer. 3 commendations for bravery. And underneath all that, 15 years of getting away with murder, taking payoffs from drug dealers and organized crime, destroying anyone who got close to the truth. "I found bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. I found bodies. I found everything. And 3 days ago, I made a mistake. I got too close, asked the wrong questions to the wrong people, and Kane found out I was onto him." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "He decided to eliminate me before I could expose him. Make it look like an accident. Tragic case of urban exploration gone wrong. But he didn't count on you, Marcus. He didn't count on a kid that nobody sees becoming the one person who could save me." Before Marcus could respond, before he could process the enormity of what Sarah was telling him, a sound echoed through the underground tunnels that made Sarah's face transform with a mixture of hope and terror all at once. Motorcycle engines. Not just 1 or 2, but dozens of them, roaring like thunder above ground, getting closer with every second. The sound was unmistakable. Harleys, big ones, probably custom jobs worth more than most cars. The vibration traveled through the concrete beneath them, making the tunnel tremble. "Reaper," Sarah breathed, and Marcus heard everything in that single word. Love, fear, relief, dread. "My brother's here. He must have tracked my phone's last GPS location before Kane destroyed it." But then came another sound that made the hope drain from Sarah's face. Police sirens. Multiple units converging on the scene from different directions. That distinctive Chicago PD wail that Marcus had learned to fear from 3 years of running and hiding. The sirens mixed with the motorcycle engines, creating a cacophony that promised violence. Marcus watched as Sarah's expression twisted into something darker, something that looked like pure existential dread. She grabbed his shoulders, her wet hands gripping him with desperate intensity, her nails digging into his skin through his soaked jacket. "Marcus, listen to me very carefully. The Hells Angels just arrived above us, my brother and his entire Brotherhood. But so did the Chicago PD, multiple units. And the cop who tried to kill me tonight. The man who murdered my father 15 years ago and has been covering it up ever since." Her voice dropped to a horrified whisper that made every hair on Marcus's body stand up. Detective Vincent Kane is one of the officers responding to this scene right now. The tunnel system stretched in both directions like concrete veins beneath Chicago's industrial district, and Marcus had no idea which way led to safety. Sarah's breathing was still labored, her body shivering violently from hypothermia, but her eyes had sharpened with focus. Above them, the chaos was escalating. Motorcycle engines rumbling, police radios crackling, boots hitting pavement. Marcus could hear shouting, but the words were muffled through layers of concrete and earth. Then Sarah pulled out her phone from an inside pocket of her jacket, and Marcus's hope deflated instantly. The screen was shattered, water dripping from the charging port, the device clearly destroyed by their underwater escape. But Sarah pressed the power button anyway, and to Marcus's shock, the screen flickered to life. Barely functional, glitching every few seconds, but alive. "Waterproof case," she explained, her fingers moving across the damaged screen with practiced speed. "Military grade. Cost me $400, but it just saved our lives twice." She was typing something, her face illuminated by the dying screen, and Marcus realized she was sending coordinates. "Reaper has tracking software linked to my phone. If I can just get this message through before the battery dies." The phone flickered, glitched, then displayed a small check mark. "Message sent." Sarah's shoulders sagged with relief, but her expression remained tense. "He'll come for us now. But so will Kane." Marcus's stomach twisted. "How do we know your brother gets here first?" "We don't," Sarah admitted. "We hide. We wait. And we pray that blood is faster than corruption." They moved deeper into the tunnel system, Marcus leading the way by instinct more than knowledge. His 3 years on the streets had taught him how to navigate dark spaces, how to read the flow of air and water to find exits. They found a junction where 4 tunnels converged, and through a crack in the ceiling. A gap where concrete had shifted over decades. Marcus could see slivers of the scene above. He pressed his eye to the crack, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Detective Vincent Kane stood in the center of the parking lot adjacent to the factory, his Chicago PD uniform immaculate despite the rain, directing officers with the calm authority of a man completely in control. But Marcus watched as Kane moved to the edge of the opening where Sarah had been trapped, where Marcus had climbed down on that rusted chain. When the other officers turned away, Kane pulled something from his jacket, a woman's scarf, expensive looking, definitely not Sarah's, and dropped it near the edge. Then he kicked some debris around, staging the scene, making it look like Sarah had been there alone, exploring, and fell in. "He's planting evidence," Marcus whispered to Sarah, who had climbed up beside him to look. Her face went white with rage. "That scarf belongs to Rebecca Chun, a journalist who went missing 6 months ago while investigating police corruption. Kane is framing me, making it look like I was involved in her disappearance before I accidentally died tonight." The implications crashed over Marcus like a wave. Kane wasn't just covering up Sarah's murder. He was destroying her reputation, ensuring that even if her body was found, any investigation she'd conducted would be dismissed as the work of a disturbed criminal. Through the crack, Marcus watched as the Hells Angels arrived. 15 motorcycles roared into the parking lot, their riders dismounting in synchronized precision that spoke of military training. And at the center of them all was Reaper. Marcus had seen him before, but only from a distance. Up close, even through a crack in concrete, the man was terrifying. 6'4", built like a linebacker, with a scarred face that looked like it had seen every kind of violence the world could offer. His leather vest was covered in patches, Hells Angels insignia, rank markers, and symbols Marcus didn't recognize. But it was his eyes that made Marcus's breath catch. Cold, calculating, and absolutely furious. Reaper strode directly toward Kane, and for a moment Marcus thought violence would erupt immediately. But Kane extended his hand, his face a mask of professional concern. "Reaper, I'm so sorry. We received a 911 call about screaming in this area. When we arrived, we found evidence that someone may have fallen into the old chamber system. The water's still draining, but—" He trailed off, letting the implication hang. "My sister," Reaper said, his voice a low growl that carried even through concrete. "Her last GPS location was here. Where is she?" Kane's expression shifted to something like sympathy, but Marcus saw the calculation behind it. "We're doing everything we can. But Reaper, I have to be honest with you. We found some disturbing evidence. This scarf belongs to a missing journalist, and there are indications your sister may have been involved. You're lying." Reaper's voice didn't rise, but the temperature in the parking lot seemed to drop 10 degrees. "My sister is a victim, not a criminal. And you're standing here feeding me bullshit instead of searching for her." Kane raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I understand you're upset, but we have protocols. Let us handle this professionally." Below ground, Sarah was typing furiously on her failing phone. "He's going to kill Reaper," she whispered. "Kane can't let him search the tunnels. If Reaper finds us alive, everything falls apart. Kane has to eliminate him too. Make it look like a tragedy. Brother dies trying to save sister. Like and subscribe. Don't let this story disappear like Sarah almost did." Marcus watched through the crack as Reaper's Brotherhood fanned out, clearly preparing to search despite Kane's protests. Several officers moved to intercept them, hands moving toward weapons, and the tension ratcheted up to breaking point. Then Reaper did something that surprised everyone. He nodded at Kane. "Fine, your protocols. But I'm going down into those tunnels, and if you try to stop me, we'll have a different kind of problem." Kane's jaw tightened, but he couldn't refuse without seeming suspicious. "Of course, I'll accompany you personally. Officers, maintain the perimeter." That was when Sarah grabbed Marcus's arm, her face stricken with realization. "He's going with Reaper into the tunnels. Kane's going to kill him down here where there are no witnesses, no cameras. He'll say Reaper became violent, that it was self-defense." Through the crack, Marcus watched as Reaper and 3 of his brothers descended into the tunnel system through a different entrance, one that led directly toward their location. And behind them, maintaining a careful distance, came Kane with his hand resting on his service weapon. The footsteps echoed through the concrete labyrinth, getting closer. Sarah pulled Marcus back from the crack, and they pressed themselves into a narrow alcove, barely breathing. Marcus could hear Reaper calling Sarah's name, his voice rough with an emotion that seemed impossible coming from a man with his reputation. "Sarah, if you can hear me, make a noise. Any noise." Sarah's hand trembled as she covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Every instinct screamed at her to respond, to call out to her brother, but Marcus saw what she saw. Kane was 10 feet behind Reaper, his weapon now drawn, waiting for the perfect moment. The perfect shot. They were directly in front of Marcus and Sarah's hiding spot now, Reaper shining a flashlight across the tunnel walls, searching desperately. And Kane raised his weapon, pointing it directly at the back of Reaper's head, his finger moving to the trigger. Marcus had a choice in that frozen moment. Stay hidden and watch Reaper die. Let Kane murder Sarah's brother and then hunt them down afterward. Or expose their position, warn Reaper, and trust that the Hell's Angels' top enforcer would be fast enough to survive. Every survival instinct Marcus had developed over 3 years on the streets screamed at him to stay silent, to stay invisible, to let other people's problems solve themselves. But Sarah was gripping his hand so tightly her nails drew blood, and Marcus thought about every time someone could have helped him and chose not to. He thought about dying alone in the cold, invisible and forgotten. "Reaper, behind you!" Marcus screamed, his voice cracking through the tunnel like a gunshot. Everything happened at once. Kane fired, the muzzle flash blinding in the darkness. Reaper twisted with inhuman speed, the bullet catching his leather vest instead of his skull, the impact driving him backward. The Hells Angels brothers drew weapons, chaos erupting in the confined space. Cain tried to fire again, his face twisted with fury and desperation, but his weapon jammed. The trigger clicked uselessly, the mechanism fouled by tunnel moisture. Reaper crashed against the wall where Marcus and Sarah were hiding, blood seeping through his vest, his eyes wild with pain and rage. Then those eyes locked onto Marcus, onto the 14-year-old homeless kid who'd just saved his life, and recognition flashed across his face. Not recognition of identity, but recognition of knowledge. Reaper saw the understanding in Marcus's expression, saw that this kid knew exactly what was happening and why. "You know something, kid," Reaper growled, one hand pressed against his bleeding chest while the other pulled a weapon from his belt. Around them, his brothers had Cain surrounded, weapons trained, but nobody firing yet, waiting for Reaper's command. "You just saved my life by screaming a warning you had no reason to give. You're down here in these tunnels when you should be running. And you're looking at Cain like you've seen him before." Reaper's eyes narrowed dangerously, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Start talking right now, or you're dying down here with him." Marcus stepped out from the alcove, Sarah beside him, both of them soaking wet and shaking from cold and adrenaline. Reaper's eyes widened in disbelief as he saw his sister alive, then immediately hardened as he processed the situation. Sarah nearly drowned, a corrupt cop trying to execute him, and a homeless kid who somehow knew everything. The Hells Angels brothers kept their weapons trained on Cain, who stood with his hands raised, his jammed pistol on the ground, his face a mask of calculation even in defeat. Marcus could see Cain's mind working, already formulating lies and escape plans. "Start talking," Reaper repeated, his voice deadly calm despite the blood spreading across his vest. "And it better be the truth, because I can tell when people lie to me." Marcus took a shaking breath and told them everything. He described hearing Sarah's screams, finding her trapped in the flooding chamber, the voices above discussing her murder like a business transaction. He recounted every word he'd heard through that crack in the concrete, watching Cain plant evidence, stage the scene, prepare to frame Sarah for crimes she didn't commit. His voice gained strength as he spoke, 3 years of invisibility falling away as these dangerous men actually listened to him. "Cain triggered those pipes remotely," Marcus said, pointing at the detective. "He had cameras monitoring the chamber. He knew exactly when Sarah would die, and he was counting down the minutes. Then when you showed up, Reaper, he couldn't let you search and find her alive. So he came down here to kill you and make it look like self-defense." The tunnel fell silent except for water dripping somewhere in the darkness. Reaper studied Marcus with an intensity that felt like being dissected, seeing past the homeless kid exterior to something deeper. "You saved my sister's life," Reaper said slowly, the words heavy with implications Marcus didn't fully understand yet. "You risked your own life diving into freezing water for a stranger. Then you risked it again by warning me when you could have stayed hidden." He turned to Sarah. "Is everything he said true?" "Every word," Sarah confirmed, moving to her brother's side. "Marcus found me with maybe 2 minutes before I drowned. He pulled me through a drainage tunnel I never would have found. And Cain," her voice filled with venom, "Cain killed our father 15 years ago, and he tried to kill me tonight to cover it up. I have proof, Reaper. Bank accounts, communications, everything. It's all uploaded to encrypted servers. If anything happens to me, it goes public automatically." Reaper's expression transformed into something primal and terrifying. The rage that crossed his face made Marcus take an involuntary step backward. But when Reaper spoke, his voice was ice-cold controlled. "Cain, you've got about 30 seconds to convince me why I shouldn't end you right here." Cain's composure cracked slightly, sweat beading on his forehead despite the tunnel's cold. "You kill a Chicago police officer, and you'll have every law enforcement agency in the country hunting you. Think about your sister, Reaper. Think about your Brotherhood. You really want to throw all that away?" "My father was a good cop," Reaper said quietly, and Marcus heard decades of buried grief in those words. "He believed in the badge, in justice, in protecting people. And you murdered him because he found out about your dirty money. You made my mother a widow. You made me and Sarah orphans. And you thought you'd get away with it forever. One of the Hells Angels brothers, a massive man with a scarred neck, spoke up. Boss, we vote. That's how we do things. Reaper nodded slowly, never taking his eyes off Kane. Brotherhood vote. This kid Marcus risked everything to save Sarah. Jumped into a death trap for someone he'd never met. Warned us about an ambush when he could have run. I say he's under our protection now. Anyone disagrees? The tunnel echoed with a unanimous aye from every Hells Angels member present. Marcus felt something shift in that moment, some fundamental change in his reality. These were dangerous men, criminals by most definitions, but they operated by codes the world above had abandoned. Loyalty, honor, protection for those who showed courage. Marcus, you're with us now, Reaper said with finality. Nobody touches you. Nobody threatens you. Your Brotherhood. Before Marcus could process what that meant, Sarah grabbed Reaper's arm urgently. We need to move. Kane's got backup coming, and he's already sent God knows what kind of false reports to dispatch. We need to get out of these tunnels before. A radio crackled on one of the fallen officer's belts. All units, be advised. Hells Angels members have taken Officer Kane hostage in the underground tunnel system. Armed and extremely dangerous. SWAT is en route. Repeat, SWAT is en route. Like and subscribe. Marcus's story isn't over yet. Kane smiled despite the weapons pointed at him. I sent that report 10 minutes ago on a dead man's switch. The moment my heart rate spiked from your bullet, Reaper, an automated message went out to every precinct in Chicago. You're cop killers now, even though I'm still breathing. And that homeless kid? He's my kidnapper. By tomorrow, his face will be on every news channel in America. The implications crashed over Marcus like a collapsing building. He'd gone from invisible to hunted in the span of 30 minutes. Foster care would be the least of his problems now. He was looking at juvenile detention or worse, and Kane would make sure he never made it to trial. Reaper made a decision with frightening speed. Rodriguez, Martinez, you two stay here with Kane. Keep him breathing but quiet. Everyone else, we're moving to the secondary exit. Fast. They ran through the tunnel system, Reaper leading despite his injury, Sarah supporting Marcus when his exhausted legs threatened to give out. The tunnels twisted and branched, but the Hells Angels moved with the confidence of men who'd scouted every inch of their territory. Behind them, Marcus could hear voices echoing, police entering the tunnels, searching, getting closer. They emerged through a storm drain into an alley 3 blocks from the factory, where more motorcycles waited. Reaper pulled Marcus aside while the others mounted up. Listen to me carefully, kid. Kane didn't just try to kill Sarah. He's been on dirty payrolls for decades, and he's protected by people with serious power. Judges, politicians, maybe even FBI. Taking him down means going to war with a system that's rotten from the inside. Marcus's head spun trying to process everything. What does that have to do with me? Everything, Reaper said grimly. You're a witness now. You saw Kane commit attempted murder. You heard his confession, and you're the one person they can't dismiss as a biased criminal. You're just a kid who was in the wrong place at the right time. Your testimony could actually hurt him. Sarah joined them, her expression urgent. Reaper, we need to move. SWAT will have this whole area locked down in minutes. But Reaper was staring at Marcus with an intensity that made the teenager's skin crawl. Marcus, I'm offering you something we've never offered anyone. Prospects usually spend years earning their patch, proving themselves over and over. But you saved my sister's life. You showed more courage in 10 minutes than most people show in their entire lives. I'm offering you immediate brotherhood, full protection, full resources, a family that will never abandon you. Marcus's throat tightened. After 3 years of being alone, invisible, forgotten, someone was offering him exactly what he'd dreamed about. What's the price? He asked, because nothing in his life had ever been free. Reaper's expression was grave. The price is you're part of this fight now. Kane has connections everywhere. Judges, FBI, even the mayor's office. Taking him down means exposing corruption that goes all the way to the top. It means danger, probably violence, and no guarantee we win. But if you join us, you're in it until the end. No backing out. Sarah placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You don't have to decide right now. We can just protect you, get you somewhere safe. He has to decide now. Reaper interrupted, pulling out a burner phone. His face was grim, almost regretful. Because Kane's got a daughter. 15 years old, named Ivy. Private school student, lives with her aunt in the Gold Coast. And according to the intelligence my brothers just sent me, Kane has already put out orders to bring her in for protective custody. Marcus felt ice spread through his veins. Why would he? Because Kane knows we'll use her against him, Reaper said bluntly. Or worse, he's cutting loose ends. If Ivy knows anything about her father's activities, she's a liability now. And Kane's shown he's willing to kill family to protect himself. He slid the burner phone across to Marcus, the screen showing a single phone number. That's Ivy's cell. My intelligence says she's about to walk into the same trap her father set for Sarah, unless someone warns her in the next 10 minutes. Someone she might actually believe. Not a criminal biker. Not her father's victim. A kid her own age who has nothing to gain by lying. Marcus stared at the phone, his hands shaking. Why me? Because you're the only one she might trust, Sarah said softly. And because if you make this call, you're choosing a side. You're declaring war on Kane and everyone who protects him. There's no going back after this. Marcus stared at the burner phone in his hand, the single phone number glowing on the cracked screen like an accusation. His thumb hovered over the call button, frozen by the weight of what this decision meant. Around him, the alley was alive with controlled chaos. Hell's Angels mounting their motorcycles, engines rumbling to life in a symphony of chrome and horsepower, ready to evacuate before SWAT turned the entire industrial district into a war zone. The smell of exhaust mixed with rain and the distant scent of Lake Michigan, creating an atmosphere thick with urgency. But Reaper stood motionless beside Marcus, arms crossed over his bloody vest, watching the 14-year-old with those cold, calculating eyes that had seen every kind of violence Chicago's streets could offer. He wasn't rushing Marcus, wasn't pressuring him. Just waiting with the infinite patience of a predator, letting the kid make a choice that would determine the trajectory of the rest of his life. Sarah leaned against one of the motorcycles, still shivering from the tunnel water that had soaked through to her bones, her dark hair plastered to her pale face. Her expression was complicated, hope mixed with guilt, determination laced with regret. She knew exactly what they were asking Marcus to do. They were asking him to drag another innocent kid into a war she never asked for, to shatter someone's world the way hers had been shattered 15 years ago. Her name is Ivy Kane, Sarah said quietly, her voice barely audible over the idling engines. 15 years old. Attends St. Catherine's Academy, one of those expensive private schools in the Gold Coast where they wear designer uniforms and study classical Latin and debate philosophy. She's on the honor roll, captain of the debate team. Volunteers at an animal shelter every Saturday. Sarah paused, her jaw tightening. She has absolutely no idea who her father really is. To her, Vincent Kane is a hero cop who works 70-hour weeks to keep Chicago safe. A man who sacrificed time with his daughter to protect strangers. A good man. Marcus felt something twist in his chest at that description. A girl his age who still believed the world was fundamentally fair, that her father was good, that badges meant protection instead of danger. The kind of innocence Marcus had lost the night his mother overdosed in their apartment. The kind of trust that died when the foster system labeled him difficult and shuffled him between homes until he finally ran. What am I supposed to say to her? Marcus asked, hating how young his voice sounded, how uncertain. Hey, your dad tried to murder someone tonight, and by the way, you're probably next on his list? Reaper's expression didn't soften even slightly. If anything, it hardened further. You tell her the truth. You tell her to run. You tell her if she doesn't believe you, she'll end up exactly like Sarah, trapped in a flooding chamber, drowning alone in the dark while her father watches through security cameras and counts down the seconds until she dies. The brutal honesty of those words hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't a game. This wasn't some movie where everything worked out in the end. This was real, and Ivy Kane was in actual danger from the one person who was supposed to protect her above all others. Marcus's finger hovered over the call button, every survival instinct he'd developed over 3 years on the streets screaming that this was wrong, that involving another kid in this nightmare made him complicit, made him no better than Cain himself. But then he thought about Sarah's screams echoing from that flooded chamber, thought about her bloody fingers clawing at concrete walls, thought about how close she'd come to dying alone and forgotten. He thought about the voices he'd heard. Cold, clinical, discussing murder like a business transaction. And he pressed the button. The phone rang once, the sound impossibly loud despite the engine noise. Twice. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. 3 times. He was about to hang up, to tell Reaper he couldn't do this, when a voice answered. Young, female, irritated in that distinctly privileged way that spoke of a life where the worst problems were homework and social drama. Who is this? Ivy demanded, suspicion sharp in her tone. How did you get this number? If this is another one of Chelsea's pranks, I swear I'm blocking you. The normalcy of her concern, worrying about pranks instead of survival, made Marcus's throat tighten. My name is Marcus, he said quickly, words tumbling out before courage could fail him completely. You don't know me, and I know this is going to sound insane, but you need to listen very carefully. Your father, Detective Vincent Cain. He's not who you think he is. He's in serious danger right now, and so are you. You need to get somewhere safe immediately. Silence stretched on the other end of the line, long enough that Marcus thought she'd hung up. Then came a sharp, disbelieving laugh that reminded him of every privileged kid who'd ever looked through him like he was invisible. Okay, is this some kind of prank? Did Chelsea put you up to this? Because honestly, it's not funny. My father is one of the most decorated officers in the Chicago Police Department. Whatever stupid game you're playing, this isn't a prank. Marcus interrupted desperately, aware of Reaper making urgent hand signals, telling him they had maybe 2 minutes before they needed to move. Your father tried to kill someone tonight. He deliberately flooded an underground chamber and watched a woman drown. Her name is Sarah, and she's the sister of a man named Reaper, and right now your father is. I'm hanging up now. Ivy cut him off, her voice ice-cold with finality. I don't know who you are, homeless kid or con artist or whatever, but my father is a decorated police officer who saves lives every single day. He's a hero, and whatever lies you're trying to spread, whatever sick agenda you have, then Marcus heard it. A voice in the background on Ivy's end, muffled but unmistakable through whatever door she was standing behind. Cain's voice, sharp and urgent, giving orders with military precision. Find the homeless kid and eliminate him. I don't care how messy it gets or how public. He's a witness, which means he's a liability. Use whatever force necessary. And bring Ivy to the safe house immediately. We can't risk her talking to anyone who might ask questions. The line went deadly, completely silent. Marcus could hear Ivy's breathing change in real time, becoming rapid and shallow, the sound of someone's entire reality fracturing. That was. Her voice trembled, all the teenage bravado and privilege stripped away in a single instant, leaving behind just a terrified kid. That was my father. He said eliminate you. He said I'm a liability. Her voice cracked on the last word, disbelief and horror mixing into something devastating. Like and subscribe. Ivy's life depends on what happens next. Ivy, listen to me very carefully, Marcus said with an urgency that surprised him, aware that every second counted now. Your father knows you were listening. He knows you heard him give orders to kill me. You've become a witness to his crimes, which means you're in danger. Real danger. You need to run right now. Don't go home. Don't go to any place he knows about. Don't trust anyone in a police uniform. Just run. Where? Ivy's voice was small now, lost. The question of a child whose world had just collapsed. I don't understand what's happening. My father wouldn't hurt me. He's a good person. He's my dad. He wouldn't. He tried to kill a woman tonight by trapping her in an underground chamber and drowning her, Marcus said bluntly, hating himself for being the one to shatter her innocence, but knowing there was no time for gentle truths or careful explanations. I was there. I saw it happen. I saved her. And I just heard him give orders to eliminate me and bring you in. Ivy, please, you have to trust me. Just run. He heard movement on Ivy's end, rapid footsteps echoing on what sounded like marble floors, a door slamming with enough force to rattle the phone's speaker. "I'm at school," she gasped, clearly running now, her expensive shoes clicking frantically. "St. Catherine's Academy, main building, 3rd floor near the library." "Oh God, there are police cars pulling up outside the front entrance right now. Multiple units. They're surrounding the building. They're here for me, aren't they? My own father sent police too." Reaper grabbed the phone from Marcus's hand with surprising gentleness, his voice commanding but not unkind. "Ivy, this is Reaper, Sarah's brother. You've probably heard of me, heard I'm dangerous, criminal, everything your father warns good kids about. But listen very carefully. Those aren't real police officers surrounding your school. They're mercenaries dressed in Chicago PD uniforms, and if they get their hands on you, you're dead. Your father doesn't leave witnesses alive. Now, northwest exit of your building, there's a service entrance used for food deliveries. Go there now. Run as fast as you can. My brothers are 3 minutes away." "The Hells Angels?" Ivy's voice rose with hysteria, all her privileged kid training about stranger danger and dangerous criminals flooding back. "You want me to trust a motorcycle gang over police officers? You want me to run away with criminals instead of the people who are supposed to protect me?" "Your choice," Reaper said with brutal honesty, his voice cold as Lake Michigan in winter. "Trust the men in uniform who work for your father and follow his orders, or trust the criminals who have absolutely nothing to gain by saving you except doing the right thing. You've got 30 seconds to decide, and then my offer expires." Marcus heard Ivy breathing hard through the phone, footsteps echoing through what sounded like a stairwell, the sound of expensive private school architecture amplifying her panic. Then her voice came through, barely a whisper of terrified determination. "Northwest exit. Service entrance. 3 minutes. If you're lying to me, if this is some kind of trap, then you're no worse off than you are right now," Reaper finished with grim logic. "But if we're telling the truth and you ignore us, you'll be dead or disappeared within the hour. Choose." He killed the call without waiting for a response and immediately turned to 2 of his brothers standing beside their motorcycles. Rodriguez, the massive man with prison tattoos covering every inch of visible skin, and Chun, a quiet Asian man with scars that suggested military background. "St. Catherine's Academy, Gold Coast District," Reaper ordered with the precision of a general deploying troops. 15-year-old girl, brown hair, probably wearing a private school uniform, navy blazer, plaid skirt, the whole Catholic school look. "She'll be at the northwest service entrance. Extract her before Kane's mercenaries do. No civilian casualties if you can possibly avoid it, but the girl's safety is absolute priority 1. If you have to choose between her life and keeping this quiet, choose her life." The 2 men roared off on their motorcycles without a single word of acknowledgement, disappearing into Chicago's afternoon traffic with the kind of precision that suggested they'd done extractions like this before. Reaper turned to Marcus, and for the first time since they'd met, something like approval flickered in those cold eyes. "You did good, kid," Reaper said, and coming from a man like him, those words carried weight Marcus hadn't expected. Making that call took real guts. Most people would have refused, would have said it wasn't their problem. Marcus felt sick to his stomach despite the praise. "I just destroyed that girl's entire world. Everything she believed about her father, about safety, about who she could trust. I shattered all of it with 1 phone call." "Better you shattered it now than she found out when he put a bullet in her head to silence her permanently," Sarah said grimly, climbing onto the back of Reaper's motorcycle and wrapping her arms around her brother's waist. "Kane doesn't leave loose ends, Marcus." The moment Ivy overheard his orders, the moment she became a potential witness, she stopped being his daughter and became a problem to solve. "You just saved her life." They rode north through Chicago, weaving through afternoon traffic with the practiced ease of men who knew every street and alley, heading toward what Reaper called the compound, a safe house outside the city limits where the Brotherhood gathered during emergencies. Marcus rode behind the quiet man with prison tattoos, holding on as they navigated between cars, his mind spinning, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 2 hours. He'd gone from homeless and invisible to being hunted by corrupt cops, protected by motorcycle gang members, and personally responsible for saving a privileged private school girl who probably hated him now. His entire life had been upended, and he wasn't sure if he'd been saved or if he'd just traded one kind of danger for another. The compound turned out to be an old warehouse in an industrial area northwest of the city, the kind of place that looked abandoned from the outside, but had clearly been converted into something else. Chain-link fencing surrounded the property, topped with razor wire. Security cameras covered every angle of approach. Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into living quarters, sleeping areas, a kitchen, a meeting room with maps and computers. This was where the Hells Angels Chicago chapter operated when they needed to disappear from the world. They'd barely arrived, Marcus still processing the security and organization of the space, when Rodriguez and Sean pulled up on their motorcycles with Ivy Kane clinging to Rodriguez's back. She looked exactly like Marcus had imagined from Sarah's description. Expensive private school uniform with a navy blazer and plaid skirt. Designer shoes that probably cost more than Marcus had spent on food in a month. Hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail that was now disheveled from the motorcycle ride. But her face was streaked with tears, mascara running in black tracks down her cheeks, her eyes wild with shock and betrayal and fear. The moment she saw Marcus, recognition flashed across her face. She'd heard his voice on the phone, could probably guess he was the homeless kid her father wanted eliminated, and she lunged at him with surprising violence. "You!" she screamed, and it took both Rodriguez and Chun to hold her back, her arms flailing as she tried to reach Marcus. "You did this. You ruined everything. My father is a good man, a hero, and you're trying to destroy him with lies. Whatever you want, whatever sick game this is." Marcus stood his ground even though every instinct told him to back away from her rage. "Your father tried to kill Sarah tonight. I watched him trap her in a flooding chamber. I watched him plant evidence to frame her for crimes she didn't commit. I heard him give orders to eliminate me because I'm a witness. And I heard him tell his people to bring you in, which is why you're here instead of wherever he was planning to take you. Liar." Ivy sobbed, but Marcus could see the doubt creeping into her eyes now, a crack in her certainty. She wanted to believe her father was innocent, but the pieces weren't fitting together anymore. Why would police surround her school? Why would her father's voice have said those things? Why would motorcycle gang members risk exposure to save her if this was all lies? Sarah stepped forward slowly, holding a tablet computer, her expression grave with the weight of what she was about to do. "Ivy, I'm Sarah, the woman your father tried to kill tonight, and I need to show you something. It's going to hurt worse than anything you've ever experienced, and I'm genuinely sorry for that. But you deserve the truth about who your father really is." She pulled up files on the tablet. Bank statements showing deposits from known criminal organizations, encrypted communications discussing payoffs and murders, surveillance photos spanning 15 years that showed Kane meeting with drug dealers and organized crime figures. The evidence was overwhelming, methodically organized, impossible to dismiss as fabrication. "Your father has been on criminal payrolls since before you were born," Sarah explained gently, scrolling through the files. "Drug cartels, organized crime syndicates, human trafficking rings, anyone who paid enough for protection and information. 15 years ago, he murdered my father, a good cop who discovered the corruption and was going to expose it. Kane made it look like gang violence during a raid, and he's been covering it up ever since." Ivy stared at the screen, her face going progressively paler as Sarah showed her transaction after transaction, communication after communication, each piece of evidence another nail in the coffin of her father's heroic image. But then Sarah hesitated, her finger hovering over a particular file folder, clearly debating whether to continue. "There's something else," Sarah said softly, and her voice carried so much compassion that Marcus knew something devastating was coming. "3 months ago, while investigating your father's criminal activities, I found something unexpected in old case files. Your mother's death, the car accident 7 years ago when you were 8, The official report said she lost control on a wet road, that it was a tragic accident. But I had an independent forensics expert review the evidence. She opened the file, showing Ivy a detailed forensics report that had been buried for 7 years, stamped with official seals and signatures from analysts who'd been paid to look the other way. Your father sabotaged your mother's brake lines, Sarah said, each word carefully measured but honest. She had discovered his criminal activities. She was planning to divorce him and testify against him in exchange for immunity. So he killed her and made it look like she lost control of her car on a rainy night. He murdered your mother to protect himself, Ivy. And then he comforted you at her funeral while knowing exactly what he'd done. The tablet slipped from Ivy's hands, clattering to the concrete floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. She stood completely frozen, her entire body rigid as her world collapsed around her. Every memory of her father was recontextualizing in real time. Every hug became manipulation. Every expression of grief became performance. Every word of comfort became calculated deception. No, she whispered, the word barely audible. No, that's not. He loved her. I remember. He cried at her funeral. He couldn't stop crying. He held me and told me everything would be okay, that we'd get through it together. But Marcus saw the exact moment belief shattered, saw the precise second Ivy realized every tear had been theater, every expression of loss a carefully calculated manipulation to maintain his cover as a grieving widower. She collapsed to her knees on the concrete floor, sobbing with grief so raw and devastating that it made Marcus's chest physically ache. He knew that feeling intimately. The moment you realized the people who were supposed to protect you were actually the ones you needed protection from. The moment childhood ended not gradually, but all at once. Before anyone could move to comfort her, before Sarah could kneel beside the broken girl and offer whatever consolation was possible, the compound's perimeter alarms began screaming with ear-splitting intensity. Red emergency lights flashed throughout the warehouse as every security monitor lit up simultaneously, showing multiple angles of the same nightmare scenario. Reaper ran to the main console, his face going hard as stone, jaw clenched with the kind of rage that came from being outmaneuvered. We've got incoming vehicles. 20 of them. Black SUVs and tactical vans. Not police. These are private military contractors. Professional mercenaries. And they're setting up a perimeter with military precision. Through the security feeds, Marcus watched as armed men in tactical gear, body armor, automatic weapons, night vision equipment, surrounded the compound with the kind of coordination that suggested extensive training. These weren't cops or thugs. These were soldiers. And at the center of it all, stepping out of a black SUV with a megaphone in one hand and something small and electronic in the other, was Detective Vincent Kane. He looked calm, almost cheerful, like a man showing up to a backyard barbecue rather than a hostage situation. His voice boomed through external speakers, amplified and controlled, the voice of someone who'd already won and was just going through formalities. I know you're watching, Reaper. I know you've got excellent security cameras. I should know. I helped install some of them 6 months ago when I was playing friendly with your organization. I know my daughter is in there. I know Sarah's alive, which is unfortunate but manageable. And I know you think you're safe behind those walls and razor wire and security systems. Kane paused for dramatic effect, clearly enjoying himself. But here's something you don't know. While your people were busy playing hero in those tunnels this afternoon, while you were rescuing Sarah and making dramatic escapes, I was here. Took me about 90 minutes to wire this entire compound with C4 explosives. Amazing what you can accomplish with the right access codes and a basic understanding of structural engineering. Every support column, every load-bearing wall, carefully placed charges that will bring this whole structure down like a controlled demolition. Reaper's hands flew across the computer console, pulling up building schematics and structural diagrams, his face darkening as he found them. Small red dots marked on the digital blueprint. Explosives on every critical support point. He's not bluffing, Reaper said grimly. Son of a bitch actually did it. He could collapse this entire building. Kane's voice continued through the speakers. almost cheerful now with the confidence of someone holding all the cards. So here's how this works, gentleman and lady. Very simple terms. You send out my daughter Ivy and that homeless kid Marcus in exactly 60 seconds, or I press this button. He held up the electronic device for the cameras to see, and everyone inside dies. Painfully, crushed under tons of concrete and steel. Your choice, Reaper. Be a hero and sacrifice 2 kids to save your brotherhood, or be a corpse buried in rubble. Either way works for me. Clock starts now. Marcus stared at Kane through the security monitors, the corrupt detective's finger resting casually on the detonator like he was holding a TV remote instead of a device that could kill dozens of people. 60 seconds. That's all the time they had to decide who lived and who died. Ivy was still on her knees, tears streaming down her face, her entire world shattered by the revelation that her father had murdered her mother. Now that same father was demanding her surrender, threatening to bury everyone alive if she didn't comply. We go, Marcus said suddenly, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Ivy and me. We walk out there and give Kane what he wants. Reaper spun around, his expression thunderous. Absolutely not. The moment you're in his hands, you're both dead. He'll put bullets in your heads before you even reach the SUVs. Then everyone in here dies, Marcus shot back, surprised by the steadiness in his own voice. I've been invisible my whole life, Reaper. Nobody cared if I lived or died. But you and Sarah and your brotherhood, you actually saw me. You gave me protection, family, purpose. I'm not letting you all die for me. Ivy looked up at Marcus, her face a mess of tears and smudged makeup, and something shifted in her expression. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of someone else whose father had destroyed them. He's right, she said quietly, climbing to her feet with shaking legs. My father is a monster, but he's still my father. Maybe I can talk to him, make him see. He'll kill you, Sarah interrupted gently. Ivy, I know it's hard to accept, but the man outside isn't your father anymore. He's a cornered animal, and cornered animals are the most dangerous. Reaper held up a hand for silence, his eyes never leaving the security monitors. A strange smile crossed his face, cold, calculating, triumphant. Kane thinks he's got us trapped, but he made one critical mistake. What mistake? Marcus asked, hope flickering despite everything. He assumed this was our real compound, Reaper said, his smile widening. This warehouse. We've been using it as a decoy for 6 months, ever since we suspected Kane had informants in our organization. The Real Brotherhood, our actual operations center, that's 15 miles north. And Sarah's evidence? The bank statements, the communications, the forensics reports on Ivy's mother. He turned to his sister. Tell them where the real files are right now. Sarah's expression mirrored her brother's cold satisfaction. At the Chicago FBI field office downtown. I've been working with Agent Rebecca Morrison for 3 months. She's the one federal agent Kane doesn't control. Everything we showed Ivy on that tablet, those were copies. The originals were delivered to the FBI 90 minutes ago, along with video testimony from me, financial records, and enough evidence to indict Kane on 47 separate charges. The moment Kane triggered those tunnel floods tonight, Morrison activated arrest warrants. Marcus felt his head spinning. So this whole thing was a trap, Reaper confirmed. We knew Kane would come after Ivy once she became a liability. We knew he'd track us here because we made sure he could. And we knew he'd do something dramatic and stupid because men like him can't help themselves. They always overplay their hand. Through the security monitors, Kane's voice boomed again. 30 seconds, Reaper. Send out the kids, or everyone dies. Reaper picked up his own megaphone, his voice carrying through external speakers. Kane, I've got a counteroffer. You drop that detonator, and maybe you survive the next 5 minutes. Kane laughed, the sound distorted through the speakers. You think I'm bluffing? I will absolutely bring this building down. Oh, I believe you, Reaper said calmly. Your charges are real. Your detonator works. But you're bluffing about the scale. See, we evacuated everyone from this compound 2 hours ago. Everyone except me, Sarah, Marcus, and Ivy. The Brotherhood, you think you're threatening? They're ghosts. And the building you wired? It's empty except for us four, and we've been standing in a reinforced safe room since you arrived. So go ahead. Press the button. Bring it down. You'll accomplish nothing except giving the FBI more charges to add to your arrest warrant." The silence that followed was deafening. Through the cameras, Marcus watched Kane's confidence falter for the first time. The detective looked around at his mercenaries, clearly recalculating. "You're lying," Kane said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Then test me," Reaper challenged. "Press the button. See what happens. Or surrender now, and maybe you get life in prison instead of death penalty." Ivy suddenly grabbed a tablet from a nearby table, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "Or option 3, Father. You face what you've done. Like and subscribe. Witness the moment everything changes." She activated the tablet's camera, and Marcus realized she was streaming live to every major news outlet in Chicago. Her face appeared on the security monitors as the stream went active, thousands of viewers connecting within seconds. "My name is Ivy Kane," she said, tears streaming down her face but her voice clear. "I'm 15 years old, and I'm the daughter of Detective Vincent Kane of the Chicago Police Department. And I'm here to tell you that my father is a murderer. He killed my mother 7 years ago and made it look like an accident. He killed a police officer named Sarah's father 15 years ago to cover up his corruption. Tonight, he tried to kill Sarah by trapping her in a flooding chamber. And right now, he's threatening to blow up a building because witnesses can expose him." The camera feed split, showing both Ivy's tearful testimony and external cameras capturing Kane's position. Viewers were watching in real time, the stream going viral across social media. Kane's face went pale as he realized what was happening. "Ivy, sweetheart, they're manipulating you." "No, Father," Ivy interrupted, her voice breaking but determined. "You manipulated me. For 15 years. Every hug was a lie. Every 'I love you' was a performance. You killed Mom because she was going to expose you. And you were going to kill me for the same reason." Through the monitors, Marcus saw FBI vehicles racing toward the location, lights and sirens blazing. Agent Morrison had been waiting for this moment, and Ivy's live testimony was the final piece. Kane saw them coming too, his face transforming from confident to desperate. He raised the detonator, finger on the trigger, but before he could press it, one of his own mercenaries tackled him to the ground. "Not worth dying for," the mercenary said, pinning Kane's arms. "You didn't pay us enough to go down for murdering a kid on live television." FBI agents swarmed the area within minutes, arresting Kane and his hired soldiers with professional efficiency. Agent Morrison herself entered the compound's safe room, her expression grim but satisfied. "Sarah, Marcus, Ivy, you're all safe now. Kane is in custody, and with Ivy's testimony broadcast to 500,000 viewers, there's no cover-up possible. He's done." Marcus watched through the monitors as agents dragged Kane toward a vehicle in handcuffs, the corrupt detective screaming about conspiracies and frame jobs that nobody believed. 15 years of getting away with murder, ended by a homeless kid and a daughter's courage. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood in the Hells Angels' actual compound, a converted firehouse north of Chicago that felt more like home than anywhere he'd lived in 3 years. Reaper conducted the patch ceremony with surprising formality. The Brotherhood gathered in full dress uniforms. "Marcus, you saved my sister's life when you had every reason to run. You showed courage that most grown men never find. This patch isn't just protection, it's recognition that you're family now." Marcus accepted the vest with the Hells Angels patch, feeling the weight of belonging for the first time since his mother died. Sarah hugged him, tears in her eyes. "You gave me my life back, Marcus, both literally and figuratively." Ivy was there too, living with her aunt now, but healing slowly. She'd testified against her father in preliminary hearings, her bravery inspiring other victims of police corruption to come forward. She approached Marcus awkwardly, still not quite sure how to relate to the boy who'd shattered and saved her world. "Thank you," she said simply, "for telling me the truth when everyone else would have let me believe the lie." Marcus nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "We're both orphans now, I guess, but at least we know the truth." As the celebration continued, Marcus's new phone buzzed with a message. Unknown number. He opened it cautiously, then felt his blood run cold. The message contained a map of the United States with 5 cities highlighted: Detroit, New Orleans, Phoenix, Philadelphia, and Atlanta. Below it, text read, Kane wasn't alone. 5 more corrupt cops. 5 more cover-ups. 5 more victims waiting for someone brave enough to help. Your courage inspired others, Marcus. Are you ready to do it again? Attached was a photo that made Marcus's hands shake. A woman he vaguely recognized from his time on Chicago's streets. Someone who'd given him food once or twice, seemed kind. But now she wore a Chicago PD badge, and she was standing next to Kane in a photo dated 3 weeks ago. The final message appeared. Her name is Detective Sarah Chun. She's been watching you since you were 12, Marcus. She knows everything about you, and she knows exactly where you'll be tomorrow. The question is, do you run or do you fight? Marcus looked up at Reaper, who was reading the same message on his own phone, his expression hard but not surprised. This was never just about Kane, Reaper said quietly. He was part of something bigger. A network of dirty cops protecting each other across multiple cities. I'm just a kid, Marcus whispered. How am I supposed to fight something that big? Reaper placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. You're not just a kid anymore. You're Brotherhood. And Brotherhood means we fight together. Kane was the first domino. Time to knock down the rest. As the sun set over Chicago, Marcus realized his new life was just beginning. He'd gone from invisible homeless kid to the one-person corrupt cops feared most. A witness they couldn't silence, couldn't intimidate, couldn't make disappear. The system had abandoned him, but he'd found a different kind of family. One that fought back.